Hello viewers, and welcome to Exploring Cinema with Brian Meadows. I, of course, am Brian Meadows. To the new viewers, welcome. Thank you so much for checking out my channel. And to the returning viewers, thank you for your continued support. Welcome back. Alright, now that we are done with the formalities, let's get on to the review. Today's review is on the 2015 Pixar animated smash hit Inside Out. So the film is set in the mind of a young girl named Riley Anderson, where five personified emotions, joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust, try to lead her through life as her parents move from Minnesota to San Francisco, and she has to adjust to her new surroundings. We have an incredible voice cast in this film, especially due to the fact that the cast playing Riley's emotions speak like you would actually think that those emotions would, and even some of them feel like just the way that they act in real life, they seem like they would be personifications of those emotions anyway. Like, here's the first example. Amy Poehler voices Joy, and for those of you who've seen her performance as Leslie Knope in Parks and Recreation, the way her character acts most of the time, optimistic and surprisingly happy with her job compared to everybody else around her, you can see why she was chosen for this role, and she gives an amazing performance as Joy. And then you have Phyllis Smith, who voices Sadness, and when I learned that she played Sadness, I had to look her up because I didn't recognize the name, but I actually thought she did a really good job. And I recognized her from the movie Bad Teacher. The way that she spoke in that lunch scene with the anxiety and slight dysphoria, I can't see anyone else portraying sadness to the level that she did. We also had comedian Lewis Black voicing anger, and there's nothing I can really say about his performance. Anyone who has ever heard him speak, whether it's on television, film, or just in his stand-up comedy, you know that he was perfect casting just from the way he speaks. And of course, we have Bill Hader, known for his work on SNL playing Fear, and Mindy Kaling voicing Disgust. Both actors gave great performances, but sadly, there's not enough to really talk about with them because they weren't given enough screen time or dialogue, and they weren't fleshed out. As far as my overall opinion on all of the voice actors playing the emotions, every emotion was portrayed fantastically, though like I said, certain characters were not fleshed out properly, namely anger, fear, disgust. We also had a pretty good voice cast for the humans, with Caitlin Diaz playing Riley herself, and Diane Lane and Kyle MacLachlan voicing both of Riley's parents. So one thing that I love to do on certain points for my reviews, I'll discuss certain things with Mallory and get her viewpoint, especially for things that we do not agree on, that we are basically at odds with each other on. And I try to incorporate those views into my review so that any of my viewers can get two opinions on certain subjects. And basically, I want to show that film and art is subjective. And I just want to give all of you guys any chance to form your opinions, but also show that it's good, it's healthy to actually acknowledge the opinion and respect it, even if you think it's a stupid one, or whatever. She's gonna kill me for saying that, but she knows what I mean. So, actually for this next part, I'm actually gonna be quoting her directly. So, hold on, she wrote it down, and she got me this book a little while ago for writing down notes for whenever I do my reviews. Hold on, let me find it. Okay, like I said, I'm reading this directly, and honestly, I wish I could, I wish I still had my glasses, because I think it'd look cool if I was wearing glasses. Here's what she said on Richard Kine's character. He didn't contribute anything useful to the film. There was a lot of halting in the story for him. He was a hole in the movie that should have been patched up. The movie had enough trouble staying focused as it was, and then the movie felt the need to put in a character that needed to be explored more, even though he was self-explanatory. It was basically another Joy character. And then she also says, sorry, I just really, with all caps, really hate him. And then she did the sideways tongue sticking out. Anyway, to be fair, Does she have some good points? Yes. Do I agree with her? No. I see him more of a sidekick than a main character. But he's a sidekick that's done right. Sidekicks are very important when it comes to stories because they make our heroes look better and they can help them be better as people. And we sometimes forget and don't realize that largely because the majority of sidekicks are complete idiots, sadly. And I'm not against a sidekick who isn't very bright. I just appreciate it when a movie decides that they want to do more than just leave the sidekicks stupid. This was the more, this character is the more that I wanted from a sidekick, that I desire from a sidekick. Simple but complex. He's a funny creature who's not very bright, and yet he has a dream of his own that's been put on hold due to, well, unfortunate circumstances. And try not to give any more spoilers. He even helps Joy to see the importance of a certain character without even trying, and Sadness is actually able to showcase the positivity of being sad through him. So yeah, he is a bit of a plot device, a sort of vessel in a way, but hell, I'm okay with that. As for the film itself, before Inside Out, audiences were worried that Pixar was starting to lose its touch, focusing more on sequels like Cars 2 or Monsters University. They felt like they felt like the sequels didn't live up to the original films. And once Inside Out was released, people started to see this as a return to tradition for Pixar. And it was because it was a new original story with great characters and a pretty touching narrative. The development for this film is actually pretty interesting. I mean, the director Pete Docter, who was known for directing Up and Monsters, Inc., got the inspiration for the story from his daughter Ellie. One day he realized that she exhibited a sort of shyness right after she started her preteen years, similar to when he was living in Denmark with growing up with social anxiety that he ended up discarding right around the time he became an adult. And noticing this change in his daughter made Doctor imagine what happens in the human mind when emotions set in, and he decided that he wanted to depict the idea through animation. Of course, he didn't know exactly how to portray emotions as strong, opinionated, caricatured personalities, so he began researching information about the human mind and even brought on consultants like Paul Ekman, who is a well-known psychologist who studies emotions, as well as Dr. Keltner, I believe his name is. He's a professor of psychology at the University of California, Berkeley. Ekman had early in his career identified six core emotions, which are anger, fear, sadness, disgust, joy, and surprise. Now, we don't have surprise in the film because Doctor found that surprise and fear were a little too similar to him, and even some other emotions that were considered for inclusion during during the development process were Schadenfreude, which is actually one of my favorite words of all time. It's a German word that means pleasure derived from the misfortune of others, ennui, which is a fancy word for boredom, pride, and hope. And Keltner focused on sadness being an emotion that strengthens relationships, and both of the consultants emphasized how emotions organize social lives and the structuring of interpersonal interactions. The film also has concepts of personality islands, which is basically self-expression in a physical place. And the idea is that Riley would have a core memory. The core memory that Riley has would create a physical island in her mind, and they would become the foundation of who she was as a person. Say, for instance, she had an important memory about scoring her first hockey goal. Thus, Hockey Island was born. That is part of the foundation of who she is. She absolutely loves hockey. She has important memories of her and her parents just having amazing times just being a family. therefore she has a family island. And then there's even one where, you know, because she's a goofy person, she has one called Goofball Island. That one's a little weird. But it is a decent concept, and I would actually like to think that, like, I would have a few personality islands. Like, I would definitely have family. Let me think. Goofball, not so much. One of the islands would definitely be Star Wars, and then I would actually have an island that was all about cinema. I'm pretty sure I would. I actually kind of like that idea. But while I feel that the personality islands are a decent concept, I more prefer the idea of our past experiences shaping who we are as people. But I still feel like the concept of the islands limit the concept to the basics, with hardly any depth to it, and that is one of the complaints that I have with this film. Actually, my biggest complaint about this film is in its execution of its core concepts, namely the personality islands and Riley's control center, where the 5 emotions live and operate. Now, I've already talked on the personality island, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the control room, or control center, whatever. For the control center, while it is an interesting concept, it's executed in a way that makes it seem as though humans are basically nothing but a puppet controlled by their emotions, that we have no personality. It's just the core emotions controlling everything that we do, nothing more. I've even actually seen one of my friends, or somebody close to me, really think on this, and they started having, like, a sort of existential crisis because they just started talking monotone and stopped caring for a little bit, and it took me a while to get them to snap out of it, because they basically thought, wow, there's nothing important to me. I'm actually just a bunch of emotions. There's no personality to me. It actually made me really sad. I also have to say that growing up, I was very socially awkward and did not understand how normal people operate. Honestly, I still have that same problem to a point. And I always thought that it was wrong to feel things like sadness, you know, just any kind of emotion like that. I was embarrassed to feel those things. And if you have or know kids who possibly feel the same way that I did, have them sit down and watch this movie. I wasn't going to ask anyone for help at such a young age, so if this movie was around during my developmental years, I don't even know if I said that word right, but anyway, during my years of development, I believe it would actually help me better than if I did actually choose to ask for help. As for animation, this was actually some of the best animation Pixar has ever given out at that point. The use of CGI animation was revolutionary in this film, with the vibrant colors and the stunning visuals, though it wasn't until later that certain things, especially the landscapes, began to look realistic, and that didn't happen until their next film, The Good Dinosaur, which I may do a video sometime down the line if I feel like watching it again, but I'll basically just say it's an okay movie, but like, the characters look very cartoonish, but the landscapes look as realistic as it can get. And actually, fun fact, Doctor intended the film's art design to kind of reflect 1950s Broadway musicals. He imagined that with emotions for characters, they could push the level of caricature both in design and the style of movement to the degrees that the studio had never done before. And although animation as an industry had always been dominated by men, at least half of the story crew were women in an attempt to have a more diverse input. And I know that there's a lot of people these days who stress the idea of diversity, so I felt like maybe that would actually be something that some of you guys would enjoy hearing. The score in this film is composed by our buddy Michael Giacchino, and for those of you who've watched my review on Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, you know that I basically worship this man. I believe wholeheartedly that he is the next John Williams, and this was his 5th collaboration with Pixar, and his 2nd with Doctor, the first being Up, which, as I already said in my Rogue One review, Up was the film that gave him his first Oscar. And My understanding is that when he was brought on to compose the film, when he met with the directors who explained the concept to him and then gave him a screening, in response to that, he wrote an 8-minute suite of music that was unconnected to the film, just based off of the emotion that he was feeling after viewing it. And instead of Doctor and him speaking of the music, they instead decided to discuss the characters and the plot, believing that it would make the score resonate more if it was tied to the characters. Personally, for me, the overall score is okay. It's not his best. There's parts where it becomes jazzy, and the main theme with the soft piano are great, both of those things, but everything else is, like I said, just okay. The highlights for me were the first couple of minutes, and then the last maybe 6 to 7 minutes before the credits. To recap, Inside Out is a wonderful animated film with great voice acting, but sadly lacked character development for certain human characters and even some of the emotions. It's also a film with amazing concepts, but mediocre execution. A good film to show your kids or kids you know, especially if you want to show them that it's okay to experience emotions and express them as well. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to me ramble on and on. Now, I must ask you guys, what did you think of Inside Out? Did you love it, hate it, indifferent, haven't seen it, etc.? It doesn't matter. I want to know. I gotta stop kicking the camera. I want to know your thoughts. I welcome new perspectives. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon page, which I will have the link for down in the description below. And you can donate as much as $1 per month. And also, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel for more reviews and content. Always more to come. Have a good day, everybody, and may the Force be with you. Always.